today is, and I think it's going to be really good, it's just about how do you plan for a season, but also be specific to each Sunday that we're effective, like week to week. How do we keep the songsters really interested, engaged, kind of that deal. So, do you want to take it from there? We'll
Yeah,
put things together first.
absolutely.
We welcome Dorothy.
Well, that's very kind of you. I mean, it feels slightly bizarre. I'm sitting in the office that we've got here at home, and I'm thousands of miles away from you. But I'm just so sorry I'm not with you this year. The plan was,
yes, that's right.
yeah, the plan was to be there, and I've got a particular. I always enjoy working with Harold, but I have a niece that lives in Roselle. I don't know how close Roselle is to where you are at the moment. I love coming to Chicago, and so it's great to be with you virtually. What I thought it might be worth doing is, first of all, just saying, why do we sing in groups? Because sometimes we forget about that. We just kind of do it. And I think it's important that we remember that we are providing music to support the worship and to communicate the Christian message. And, we must never, ever forget that. But I also think there's a Bible commission that tells us to sing. If we think of Psalm 150, we are charged that we should be singing about God and about our faith. And I think that's really, really important to remember. I don't know about you, but I also have learned lots of scripture when you're involved. I suppose going way, way back to the early days of the church, when it was only the monks that could read. Everybody else had to learn to sing, and repetition, it kind of helps you to remember all sorts of bits of scripture. I'm sure we can all quote all different sorts of bits. And I think another really important thing is that it creates an opportunity for fellowship and for creating a community. And then lastly, it was something that I was taught actually by my father. Harold and I have just been talking earlier, as you were gathering, I suppose, about role models that we have in life and people we want to be like. But he always said to me that you should do the best for the highest. And I think we're also commissioned to, in whatever setting we're in, to actually try and do it to the very, very best of our ability. Harold, can you just quickly tell me what kind of groups are the people that are those who are with you, the friends you've got there? What kind of groups are they leading? Is it children? Is it adults? Is it starting things up? Is it experienced groups? What's there?
Some experienced groups represented here, and also some. We have a DMD who's going to start a youth course in the fall, and we have another DMD. Well, I have a couple DMDs here who came because I told them my story, which was I was a band guy who had to figure out the choir thing. So I told them to come here because they've had enough of the other thing. And then we have some young people, both from the city and urban situations, but others who perhaps will be starting groups. So it's a mixture.
Yeah, it's a whole sort of mixed bag. Well, if we're talking about repertoire for the groups that we've got, all I can say to you is it takes forever to sort out repertoire. And actually, if you could see, I'm not going to show you because there's lots of mess here, but I've got two big filing cabinets to my left, full of music, and upstairs I've got about 4 or 5 different cupboards of things that I've sort of gathered over the years. Some I've used, some I haven't. But I think there are a number of things we have to think about when we're choosing music for the people we're responsibility, and what a privilege that is for what we're going to sing. So we need to think about the sorts of group that we have. We need to think about what are we singing for? What kind of events? We've got to think about our listeners. I always think that's kind of often the best way to start when I'm trying to choose things. Within that, it's not just about the individual songs that we sing, it's about how, if we're putting on a festival or if we're part of a service, then we've got to think about the listeners and the kind of pace of things that goes on. My own kind of philosophy, if any of you've ever heard the staff songs, is that I try to do a whole range of different things. Because from my perspective, you just don't know what listeners you've got, and you make an assumption of what people like, I think, at your peril. I've known kind of older people in an audience like something that's really upbeat and really sort of syncopated, all the rest of it. And then I've had people who are younger wanting something that's much more fluid and much more choral. So we've got to remember about our listeners. We've also got to think about where we're singing, the kind of venues that we have. So what you will sing, well, I don't know what's happened in the States, but here in the UK, a lot of army halls have been kind of updated, but often they've lost the lovely acoustic that they had, or they've become a little bit smaller. So we often find as a staff songsters that if we're going on a weekend, the Saturday night is often in a church because they need a bigger venue. Now that quite suits me because you've got a helpful acoustic often in that situation. But equally, you've got to watch what you sing in a church because it might not work. You know, if it's something very quick and very articulated, that's not going to work. You need to also think about your accompanists. Now, I'm hoping that you've all got either an accompanist or an accompanying team. Look after them is what I would say to you. You need to make sure that you are constantly having a chat with them and that you're valuing them. But that sort of thing has got to be in your mind when you're choosing repertoire. And then the last thing I'm going to say is that it's about also you choose repertoire to try and develop your group. You know, you want them to sing the best they possibly can. And so when you're choosing things to do, then it's important that you're thinking about, right, what is it that they need? If we look back kind of in musical history, we know that actually looking back was often, we weren't reading music. Now I know that Harold's really keen on everyone being able to sight read really well. But if he'd been about 100 years ago, he would have had that option because they would have had to listen, they would have had to have learned by rote. And you will know your group. And sometimes that's absolutely acceptable because actually, you know, you want people to feel comfortable. And then equally, it's also if you've got really capable people in your group, you need to make sure that they are challenged. So, you know, it's important. The one other thing I would say also is that when we're choosing repertoire, you want to kind of make people feel involved. I would caution you to think that you're ever going to pick a piece of music that absolutely everybody in your group's going to like. I'll say that again. I don't, if you find it, I mean, I would say from a staff songster point of view, 99.9% of the staff songsters would love to sing Len's arrangement of More Than Wonderful because it's a really powerful piece. It's really wonderful. But when I took on the group, there was somebody who complained to me that they were fed up singing it, whereas everybody else was enjoying it. So I think that's quite an important lesson to learn, that whatever you choose, you're going to have some confidence in it and you're going to keep, hopefully, most of the people happy all the time. But I tell you, you won't keep all the people happy all of the time. But as long as you know why you are doing it. So I thought I would try and punctuate me chatting with just a few little bits of music as well. I have the lovely Jonathan Weller is going to be my IT technician. So the first example I've got really of something is just a very simple setting of Amazing Grace that Richard Phillips put together for me. And this is, it was really written, so it was put together so that if we're in different situations, maybe before we do a festival in the evening, we will be able to get people to come along, to feel part of what's going on, to be able to join in. It's a song that you will all know. And if you notice, what we've done here is it's people that have sung, the ISS is in there somewhere. There's people who've never sung before. But having just worked a little bit, we were able to pull together this performance. Thank you, Jonathan.
tiene algunas condiciones meteorológicas. Centrarnos en Goya.
Ah, I'm not quite sure what that was. But the reason really, oh sorry, Jonathan's still thinking about it. The reason for just playing that through is to show that with a group of I've got to watch how I say this. It was an assortment of people that turned up that afternoon, and we created a choir. Now, by choosing something that people knew, something that was very familiar to them, it gave them some confidence. It gave a chance to talk about phrasing and to get them to do beautifully shaped phrases. It gave them an opportunity to watch. I have to say, I should have told off a few for not sitting up straight. I obviously didn't get that deportment bit right. But it was an opportunity to feel part of something together. And it was different dynamics, different tempos. We had to slow, they had to watch. And so you can very quickly, if you use material that people know, just push the boundaries. And it's amazing what you can get within the space of about half an hour. I suppose I was quite lucky there. There was good support around there, but it created a choir, and it was a piece of music, as I say, that was pretty straightforward. Now, in terms of, I've given myself a little list here called leadership issues. And actually, they are what you do as a leader, but they're also related to repertoire. So I'm going to say what they are, first of all. I'm going to say that when you are a leader, you have to be respectful. You have to show lots of emotional intelligence. You've got to do research. You've got to be sensitive. You've got to encourage people to be confident. And you've got to, I suppose, be ready to look after your flock. You know, what we do as leaders in the army, I would say, is probably 80% pastoral and 20% music. Don't know if you would agree with that. But it's, so if I said this, if I go back through them then, so respect means that you need to know your group. You need to know what they can do. You need to know how you develop them. And I'll give you a little story. I was very fortunate at quite a young age to have a lovely songster brigade at Bristol Easton, and they were very, very capable, and they were doing really well. And I thought it'd be a good idea to really push them. And so I decided that we've done lots of different styles, whatever, but in order to move the singing on, I was going to introduce them to Handel's Messiah, which was going to be quite a step up in terms of technical ability and musicianship. And it didn't go down particularly well because, well, when I say it didn't go down very well, I would say 2/3 were desperate to do it because they were really keen. And then there was a third who were, I suppose, anxious about it. And they thought it was a step too far. And I had to use all my powers of persuasion. And I kind of got it down to one person who was really, really not happy at all. But I still kept trying to, do this. Anyway, cut an awfully long story short, we did the Messiah. And she was wonderful because she was incredibly respectful to me, because after it, she said, actually, it turned out to be the highlight of her songster career, and that she was absolutely delighted that we had done it. So it's about kind of showing respect and helping people when they're in a tricky situation. Emotional intelligence is something that we have to show as a leader all the time. And, sometimes we get it right and sometimes we get it wrong. But the way you get better at it is to actually know about your folk, and then you can look after them, but also you can find out what it is that they will sing well, or where you have to be sort of tenacious. I put about research. Now, at the end, I will kind of give a list of places I think I look to find material. But you do need to think things through, and it takes time. It's not a 5-minute job. But I'll talk some more about that a little bit later. And sensitivity. We have a privilege standing in front of a group because we can actually see the whites of people's eyes, and we can see how things are going. And, sometimes we choose things and maybe we haven't got it right. And so we need to be sensitive enough if you feel it's not going anywhere, then maybe you've got to leave it. But equally, sometimes it's about individuals, and then you've got to look at them sensitively. And then it is our job to actually give people confidence. Now, what I would advise you to do is when you've got something that's a little bit tricky to teach, try and develop your own strategies for doing it. So, for example, there's a piece of music that Harold, I don't know if, yes, you were at Old Orchard Beach when I was able to staff songsters. And it was one of the first pieces of music I ever taught them. And it's a beautiful setting of The Lamb by John Tavener. And the first section is a bit tricky to do because the intervals are hard. But what we would call the chorus is actually quite chordal and quite easy. So I decided to teach the chorus first to give them confidence. And so they actually knew that bit. So they've done half the piece before we started off on the bit that was a little bit more demanding. So, you know, you just need to think about these things. Okay, right. So we're going to develop our group. What things do we want to develop? Well, I think for me, and I think it's absolutely crucial to what we do, we're going to get people to listen, is we've got to develop a beautiful sound, and a sound that is appropriate for all sorts of different settings. So, Jonathan, I'm going to skip to the second one, actually. Sorry, the third clip that I gave you, which is the setting of "Oh Love." Now, this is a beautiful setting of the words "Oh Love that will not let me go." And I was a little bit resistant to sing this version originally because I love the hymn tune St. Margaret, the tune that the words are normally associated with. But this is a beautiful setting, and it's a lovely opportunity to create a very, very warm sound. As it happens in this clip, we're singing in an extremely cold Gloucester Cathedral, and that helps as well. But if you haven't got the nucleus of a good sound, then you're still not going to be able to recreate it, even if you're in a lovely building. So have a listen to the kind of sound, the different colours, and the phrasing in this beautiful piece, "Oh Love" by Elaine Hagenberg. Is that a piece of music that you all know? Is it familiar? Yeah? Yes, no? Yeah, I've got to get you some notes. And it's a beautiful piece of music where you can really work on the sound, you can work, and you do that through the use of the vowels, the consonants, the shape, the phrasing, and so that's a great way of kind of developing sound. Rhythm is another thing you've got to work really hard at. I think we're a bit guilty sometimes that we rely on any kit player we might have to keep the rhythm really tight. But once again, choose music that can actually makes people think and develop that kind of inner sense of pulse. I think every baby should have a metronome planted in them when they're born. Would be my choice if that was at all possible. It would certainly make all of our lives a lot easier too. But I think, you know, do some music that just means that they've got to be absolutely together. With that. Pitch, I would also encourage that you find music where your groups have got to sing without any accompaniment. It's sort of, if you can have unadulterated singing, there actually isn't anything to better it. I'm not being disrespectful to any of my accompanist. I wouldn't be without them. But that's something else really to put into your armory to do that. No, I said it, I was kidding Harold on earlier about sight reading and reading, and actually it is very important and it does aid us all to develop. And so choosing music that people can read, and once again, a variety of songs. So do things, stepwise movement, I don't know, things like He Leadeth Me, where people can kind of get the shape of it. If they're not natural readers, that's important. Another really important thing we have to do when we sing, and we can get a chance to do this depending on the repertoire that is chosen, is listening. And if we think back, often we fall into the trap that the sopranos always sing the tune and everybody else kind of goes along. But try and choose music that's a little bit more sort of polyphonic, kind of more interesting parts for everybody, because then that actually helps us to listen and then to be more of a sort of ensemble together. And lastly, I think you need to choose material that will help your group to communicate the joy that they feel. What you want is for people to look at you and your group and say, goodness, well, they can't be wrong. You know, they all believe the same thing. And by the way they're singing and by the way they're looking at communication is really, really important. Okay, I used to get fed up. I would go to courses and I wanted to come away with a list of music that I could possibly look at as possible. And I'm not going to quite give you that. I'll talk about what I have left with Harold and Jonathan for you. But where do you look for stuff? Now, I'm sure you've got all sorts of ways that you look. I mean, I look at obviously all the army publications that come out throughout the world. Obviously, there's music that comes out in the UK, in America, Australia, all over the place. Do have a look at all the army publications. I think the other good way of finding good repertoire is just to listen to choirs that you really like. We are very blessed these days to have YouTube. When Harold and I were music students, you had to sit in a room with a record. I guess some of you might not know what a record is. But it is so easy now to have a listen to different choirs, and actually, I would say in and out of the army, and find out a bit more about their repertoire. I often will hear things, oh, goodness, I think that would work really well. You will know there are tons of websites out there, and you'll be very familiar, I'm sure, with places like Sheet Music Plus, J.W. Pepper, different composers. If you get a piece of music, I guess we've all probably done a bit of Mark Hayes from time to time, but there's lots of stuff, there's things coming out. The Mac Wahlberg stuff is very good, particularly at Christmas times. And I have to say, I used to love going into music shops and browsing, but I don't know about the States, but there's hardly any left now in the UK. I could spend hours just going through, just as well I can read music, but it was helpful to just sit and do it. And of course, now you have to do it on the internet. So if you get the chance to listen to what's on offer as well, do that. But listen with, don't be put off. Sometimes you listen to something and it doesn't quite sound like what you think it might be, but actually, that would be what you would make of the music. I'd also say make friends with composers. Harold's absolutely right. I've sung quite a lot of his stuff. People like Ken Downey, Dorothy Gates, Richard Phillips, Bill Himes. There's lots and lots of people. Just make friends with them, because actually they'll let you know what material they've got there, and share it, and just be careful of that. Can I just put in one little thing though, from a composer's point of view? Be careful about copyright. I think I would put a pat on the back to people in the States. I think you're much better at buying music properly and being aware of copyright, but it's important that you do buy the music. Talk to each other. Often, I just love talking to other leaders and seeing what it is that they've got. In fact, people, you swap music and you see what's working there. What I have left for you with Jonathan, with Harold, is that as a result of lockdown, I was aware that officers up and down the country were looking for material to go with sermons or online meetings. What we've done is we've put together a kind of thematic spreadsheet, a kind of data slice of things on different topics. So it could be about prayer, it could be about harvest, it could be about praise, it could be about Christmas. And it's not a spreadsheet for you to use that will address all these issues that I've brought up today. But if you're looking for something from a thematic point of view, you would be able to find an ISS recording of those pieces. Now, I've given Jonathan and Harold two spreadsheets. One is a thematic one, and then another is just an actual spreadsheet of everything that the ISS have ever recorded over the last 40 years. And once again, it's not for you to necessarily go through it and see that this is going to be a way to work with your choir, but it's just another resource, a great big long list of songs that we know may work. Now, I think Harold, when we chatted yesterday, said, what are we going to do about getting people back and interested after COVID? Have we all got a bit used to sitting at home and fast forwarding through the bits of the meeting we'd rather fast forward to? And how do we get people back? Well, I think repertoire is actually a big part of that. And you need to come up, your groups better than I do, but come up with things that they can sing really well. Come up with things that will be attractive. Be careful of not doing all too easy, because I'm sure all of you sitting there would quickly get bored if it was all too easy. And so you've got to mix things up. And, it is tricky to get it right. Don't beat yourself up too much, but, you have to think about this an awful lot. So, when we come back, and hopefully some of you maybe are back already, do a mixture of old things that people know so that you can kind of just gently get them singing again, but also new repertoire to kind of excite them and kind of keep their interest. One of the things that I've maybe fallen foul of, I've spent quite a bit of time working with a group, any group, and, I thought, oh, this is going to work, but actually I've never quite found the right place to sing it or to use it. Then maybe it's just something that you do in the practice room, because it's okay to just practice, and then it might not see the light of day. It might be one of those things that kind of comes closely. And then, as I said earlier, coming back, I think it's even more important that we try to set an optimistic and positive environment. You have such a responsibility, we have such a responsibility as leaders to create the environment for people to do well and to want to be there. Who wants to sing to somebody who's got a moody face? Who wants to sing for somebody that's always telling them off? Who wants to sing for somebody that's kind of had a bad day at work and takes it out on them? Well, I don't think we do. So, I know we're probably, the saying over here is we'd be like a Butlin's red coat. I don't know what the American equivalent would be, but, you've got to be bright and cheery and optimistic and can do. And I think that's going to be really, really important. And as I say, just work really, really hard at getting the right repertoire. Now, I've got two more things. Well, I see Or maybe I should do a straw poll. I've said on my notes here, sometimes just do some fun things. So what would you prefer? There's a choice of fun things. Jonathan's got two there. One is actually a Christmas one. It's a fun version of Jingle Bells. Or the other is Light Walk. It's a vocal version of Jingle Bells or Light Walk. Harold, can you assess for me which fun thing we're going to listen to?
It's too early for Christmas.
I think the performance of Jingle Bells is
Oh,
phenomenal.
Jingle Bells, okay.
No,
Jingle Bells, Jingle Bells. Do Jingle Bells, Jonathan.
I want to mention, this is the performance with Richard, is it?
Yeah.
So Richard Woodrow would have been our guest last year or this year, whatever the case is, the flugelhorn soloist of the ISB. And you'll see that he's going to play the solo from the audience.
This doesn't look like Jingle Bells at all. We'll do that in a minute.
Jingle Bells, we could do Light Walk.
No, do Light Walk then, okay.
We'll do them both. But anyway, I guess Dorothy called about an hour before, make sure you bring your horn. So he's in the audience. What I love about this British audience is it's like nothing's happening around him. He's playing like, in America, they're going, what the heck's he doing, right? So it's kind of fun. So we should watch this. That's all right. We'll watch
Well, I think you're going to have to get Richard to do that.
Given you'll do that when you come, huh?
Yeah, it's interesting that he said to me, is it okay if I sit down to do it? And I said, well, do what you like, Richard, you know, thank you for helping us out. And he particularly wanted to sit because the gentleman in front of him was a man called Derek Tyrrell, who's an officer. I don't know if any of you have ever met him. And he particularly wanted to play at the back of his head, apparently. So, so that was Richard. But, you know, have fun. It's okay to have fun at the army. And it's great to have fun. And, you know, yeah, that would be something to do. Maybe we'll finish with Jingle Bells, but I'm kind of quite, well, I said to Harold I would leave some time for questions, and I'll do that. But there is another little piece that I would quite like to put in. So I don't know if we could do maybe 10 minutes of questions, and then I'll just talk to you about the other little short one and kind of explain some background. But any questions, it can be about repertoire, it can be about ISS, whatever you like. Or have I stunned you into silence?
We got a question actually on the chat. John's going to give it to you.
Oh, there's one in the chat. Okay.
So the question is from Javier Yanez.
Yeah.
Grace, we saw people of various ages. I
Yeah.
believe in a choir where there are also many people of various ages, especially older. They sometimes get frustrated when they can't sing a verse or a note that can't be recorded for a presentation in these times of pandemic. What would be your advice to address problems or frustrations of that older age group? We know that everyone is important for them, and it's especially good that they feel a part of a group, and sometimes because of this detail, they could withdraw.
Yeah, absolutely. So therefore, and I would agree that wholeheartedly, it's one of the joys of being a songster leader that you have such a wide age range within the group. And it's absolutely vital that we look after new people coming in, very young people, but also those who've been stalwarts throughout the years. I think the way you have to do it is to actually just look very carefully at the range of the music that you're doing and get the pitch right, because often it's a pitch thing that actually, well, it can be one of two things. It can be either pitch or it can be to do with breathing and phrasing. Now, the breathing and phrasing thing is quite an easy one to sort out because you talk a lot about staggered breathing and make people feel comfortable and kind of show them how to just breathe without anybody noticing. But the pitch thing is quite important. If you've got somebody that you're really worried about, I'll give you an example. I had in a choral songster brigade that I did, there was a lady who was just delightful, but she couldn't pitch at all. She just, you know, everything was all on the one note. And I thought, what am I going to do here? So to be honest, a lot of the time, you know, she sang quite quietly. You didn't really notice. And she was surrounded by other good people. But if you ever wanted to do something that was just one part, you would hear this sort of in unison, you would hear this little noise going on underneath. Now, I never ever picked on her, and I knew who it was. In fact, just about everybody else knew who it was, but that would have been totally insensitive to sort of say anything to her. However, the way I handled it was that if I knew there was a bit like this coming up, I would go through the group line by line. So I do the first row. I think she was in the second row, or third, I don't know. And whenever her row sang, she was a bit shy at that point. It sounds as if I was terrible. I wasn't being horrible to her. I was trying to be respectful, but she would not really sing out when there was a smaller number. And so I would say, oh, I don't know what happened there, but that was fantastic. Make sure you just do it that way. And so I never had a problem then, because she sort of, without having to say anything or do anything, she kind of knew, well, maybe I would be a bit quiet at that point. But you can also do it, as I say, by pitch and choosing material. And it might be you have different sections of the group that sing at different times, but don't ever point it out. And, you know, look after somebody and, you know, just if you're aware of it, work around it, as I say, by pitch, by choosing, or maybe we'll have this part of the group doing this particular bit if you know there's going to be a problem. I don't know if that's helpful, but, you know, it's a good way of handling when you've got kind of one-off things like that. Or if they're mostly old, then that actually sort of makes it easier because you can choose repertoire that will work.
Question? Don't be shy. I'll talk to you about this.
Oh, please don't be shy. I'm looking forward to meeting you, hopefully next year.
Yeah, we need at least a question, so Dorothy will come back next year. This is, well, we haven't had. Someone's got a question. Yeah, Rachel has one.
Thank you.
I was thinking about what you said about thinking about the listener. And
Yeah.
so just going back to that last clip, and we were kind of giggling about the kind of sour look of the people that were around the flugelhorn. When you're engaging in music with your songster brigade or whomever, and you're getting them into it, they know the message that they're communicating, but you're singing to people that kind of have that "bless me if you can" look on their face. How do you keep the brigade encouraged that it's not about the repertoire, it's about the message, or it is about the repertoire as well, but I mean, to keep them from feeling as though, well, keep them focused on the right audience?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. They were actually all enjoying it. They might not have looked like it because I was standing on the days when we used to shake hands on the way out. I was chatting to them all. I think, we're just a bit reserved as Brits. And I have to say, I think some of my ISS members could have done with cheering up a bit when they were singing that. They're normally looking kind of happy. I think there's a bit before you open your mouth. And in terms of communicating with your audience, what I quite like to do is actually go and have a chat with people in the audience before you start. So it's actually nothing to do with the singing. It's actually to go and kind of make connections with people and have a conversation. And so even if they only talk to 2 or 3 people, when you start singing, they've got somebody that they've kind of met and somebody that they can look out for. So I think you back to setting the environment. I think sometimes it's difficult. I mean, I haven't particularly found it in army audiences. I've been in as a musician, I've been in competitive situations, and that can be a bit tricky because people are waiting for you to make a mistake, sort of thing. But I think you have to just make sure that the group know what they're doing, why they're doing it, that they're doing it with great confidence, and they need to kind of I suppose take on that responsibility of sharing it through their whole being, through their faces, and actually you need to remind them that this is a good thing. We once had somebody contact me that had watched a clip on YouTube, and by the expressions on people's faces, he felt he had to get back to church because we were singing what we believed. And that is the biggest advantage, we've got as army leaders, because we're actually singing with groups that believe what they're singing. It's really, really compelling. So I'm sure every audience in America is good, but you will get some audiences, they'll like some things and they'll like and not like someone else, or we're all subjective in that situation. And sometimes it's also about explaining the music and helping them find a way in. So I think, have confidence, reassure your singers. If they're well prepared and they believe what they're singing and they're doing it really well, it will be communicating and it will be good for them. Because I think, we've all learned a lot through words that we've sung and that kind of corporate experience where we feel we're part of a group. That means something really, really special and is trying to communicate their faith to other people. So I think make connections with people in an audience. Don't be put off if they don't like absolutely everything that you do, but just be confident that you're properly prepared and you are doing the best for the highest and it's to the best of your ability.
When you are choosing your repertoire,
Yeah.
Do you choose some items that are strictly for the group as opposed to the audience itself?
That's a tricky question. I'm trying to think of both, but in practice, I will be doing a whole load of different things because I know that the settings that my group will be in will be quite different as the year goes through. So what I'm trying to do is to do a wide range. So for example, when you saw that version of Oh Love, it would be quite difficult to do some of our repertoire in that situation. But if I hadn't kind of worked, so I do quite a lot of sort of a cappella work. So I'm sort of doing that for the group, but I'm also doing it because I may be able to use it in a different setting. Does that make any sense at all? You know, there will occasionally, very occasionally be something that I won't use, that I've just wanted to do for practice, or maybe the situation hasn't been right. I remember talking to Harold about a piece that I was given by somebody, a well-known army composer, which is a Nunc Dimittis. Well, I don't think I've ever heard a Nunc Dimittis in an army meeting, and I've never found the opportunity to use it, but it would still be a good thing to rehearse. So the bulk of it is thinking about audiences, because actually I'm quite time constrained as well for the amount of repertoire. We sing about 36 songs maybe on a weekend away. So I'm quite time constrained, given I've got about an hour and 3/4 a week to kind of get through everything. But yes, I would sometimes do something in practice that was for the group that I just thought would be good for them to do. But it would certainly be, you know, a smaller percentage. It's not something that I would do a lot of.
All right, thank you. We've got one from the chat from Catherine. This is a good one. What is the first thing you will do when you return to in-person rehearsals?
What is the first thing I do? I want to just see everybody and to catch up. But I will do some warm-ups. And that was something else that we haven't really touched on. But sometimes, you know, I think I will actually do warm-ups. I do quite a lot of sort of breathing stuff, humming, trying to focus the voice, trying to get some flexibility, trying to get some rhythmic stuff going, trying to get some control. But sometimes also, well, yeah, it will just be lovely to see people. And there's a few songs we've done, you know, that awful thing about singing into your phone and, you know, doing a virtual choir that we've all been doing. I'm just so looking forward to singing some of that together. And one of the songs we did was a song called When God Comes Near, which is one of Bill Hymes's pieces. And if you look on if you want to hear it, it's on the ISS Facebook site. But it's got such lovely, lovely words. And I think actually that will be the first song that we'll sing, because it's been so appropriate for lockdown. And I think, you know, it blessed people a great deal as well. So I'll be just pleased to see them. I'll be delighted to hear what they sound like together. At least I hope I'll be delighted to what they sound like when they're back together. And we're going to sing When God Comes Near.
Dorothy, when you were beginning in your songster participation, or choir participation, I don't know if this is a repertoire question or something else, but as a young singer, was there one thing or one person or one piece that made choral participation more doable or more appealing for you?
Well, I grew up with parents that were leaders in the army. My father was a bandmaster. He brought governed band to America in the 60s. My mum was a sing company leader. So there was stuff going on all round about all the time. And I think it was just what we all did as a family. So there was a sort of innate thing going on there. But I think when I got a little bit older, when I was at school, I had a lovely music teacher who used to get, I have to admit it was a girls only school, but there were kind of 8 of us who were really interested in music and singing, and she got the 8 of us to sing quite a lot of unaccompanied music. And also her husband, who was also a music teacher, he was involved with the local university, Glasgow University, and we were taken as a sort of special treat to take part in the Bach's at Matthew Passion. This isn't sounding like army music at all. I mean, I loved army music, you know, music schools, all that sort of thing. But I think it was that sound, that kind of grand scale, that had a sort of massive impression on me. And alongside that was just a sort of family desire that singing and making music was just what we did. And so it was always something that was really, really important to me. And you know, I had two incredible parents who gave me such a wonderful Christian example and showed me how music, it's a way of expressing what you feel. It's a way of communicating the gospel. And, you know, it's an emotional thing, and it's an emotional connection. So I would say probably family, and then just being able to be, you know, round lots of really good music.
Last question. Anybody?
You've been far too kind.
Here we got one. John Heaver, he's divisional music director in Kansas.
Hi, John.
Hi, Dorothy.
Oh, I'm Dorothy. I should be going to Kansas, shouldn't I?
There's no place like home, right?
No place like home.
So within the ISS, in your rehearsals, when you're together as a group, how do you as a group address spiritual development as a group? Do you have prayer partners that meet, and do you use music that you may sing together just as a group to facilitate devotions, prayer partners, anything that your chaplain, your songster sergeant may be bringing to the group?
Yeah, well, obviously, well, we do have prayer partners. We do have, you know, when you're teaching songs, you're talking about what is meant. But we have a spiritual spot every meeting. We have an executive officer. We do have two sergeants. We have, this sounds not very equal opportunities, but we have a female sergeant and a male sergeant. But we all take turns to have a spiritual thought. In every so, you know, every time we get together. And in this day, one of the things that's been interesting through lockdown is we did keep meeting. We met every fortnight as a group, and we continued having the thought for the day as it would be. But also because we were all in a messenger group, there's been all sorts of requests for prayer or for help. Or one of the group is very good at writing words, so he's sent encouraging words and poetry, and so it's very much part of what we do, and is absolutely vital to remind us, you know, why we're doing what we're doing, which is kind of, you've taken me full circle to what I said at the beginning. So it's absolutely, you know, it's at the forefront there. I mean, having said that, we also work very hard. You know, we have a short rehearsal, and we've got a lot of stuff to do. But it's both what you say, but it's also, I think, in the way people look after each other. They're incredibly caring as a group. I've been doing the staff songs for almost 18 years now, but within the first year, I lost a very dear relative, and I cannot tell you the support I got from them as individuals. So that sort of spiritual closeness is really important to us, and is certainly nurtured on a week by week basis.
Jingle bell. Dorothy, did you want to say something first before?
Yeah, well, I just thought I mean, you can watch Jingle Bells at your leisure to see Jonathan, he'll show it to you. But I'd quite like to finish with a piece of music called Contemplation. And I don't know if you know, but it was the ISS's 40th anniversary last year. And we should have been coming to see you, actually. We should have been out your way, and we, as part of that celebration, we sang, we had an evening where we sang 4 choral symphonies that Richard Phillips has written for us. But I think of all the movements, each of those pieces were major works. There were 4 movements in each. Each of them last about 15, 17 minutes as a whole. And we put on a concert with the London Mozart Players. And it's because it's unusual for us as an army group to be singing with an orchestra rather than a band. But this particular movement, I think of all of them, is one that has really, really hit a spot. And it's setting the scene. It's talking about the fact that Jesus was alone in the garden, and he was thinking, he knew what was to come. And what it says in the music is that, you know, it's not my will. If it's your will, it will be done. And what you hear in the music, it's not the showiest piece of music, but it is just glorious. And you can hear all the words at the beginning, the first section. And then in the middle, I think Rich has been really clever in that he's used wind instruments, sort of going from one to the other, to just almost feel the weight of responsibility, the sighs going from one to another. And then it comes back and it talks about the fact that it's God's will that he has to go through what is to come. And I don't finish with this to leave it in a downbeat way, but more in an inspiring way. That, so many people have found themselves in so many different situations. And we've got such a privilege within the army and within music to be such a support to each other, and whatever people have to face, that we are there to support them. And ultimately, that Jesus went to the cross for us to save our sins. So I hope you will find this particular piece of music very supportive, but also I think it's very intense and just very beautiful and very inspiring.
los pilotos. Viene
Thank you, Dorothy, for sharing with us. Can we share our thanks? Yeah.
It's a pleasure.
I would like to breathe a prayer, if I could do that, even through this odd way. We thank you, Lord, for Dorothy Nancekievil. We thank you for the International Staff Songsters. We thank you for song. We thank you for the opportunity we have to kind of think about and ruminate about the ways that we can use our song. We thank you for all this music you've given us in the Salvation Army and otherwise. And we pray that you would help us to make these wise choices, that we want to connect with our audiences. We want to connect with our groups. We want to connect with you in a special way. And we just thank you for this gift you've given us. And I just pray for her ministry as the International Staff Songsters try to come back. And for that occasion, they'll be together. That'll be very special indeed. So thank you for your goodness to us, Father. We thank you for music again and the glorious gift it is this day you gave us. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you sharing with us this afternoon. And hopefully you will make it to this chapel.
Well, I hope so. What are you all doing next? What's next in the program?
Actually, I'm going to talk about reading music, actually.
Oh, excellent. That's great. Well, anyway, it's been lovely to meet you all. You know, it's from afar, but hopefully we'll get to meet in person in a year's time. It'd be great.
Thank you so much, Dorothy.
Okay, bye. Bye.